Hello and greetings on this fourth week of Lent. This week we continue our journey towards healing, joy, and empowerment with a reflection on the parable of the prodigal son. And so one way to view the story is to see how it comments on the ways God's power prioritizes and emphasizes loving and right relationship. The story is found in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. I invite you to read it if you're not familiar with it. And if you are familiar with it, then reread it. To summarize, or to maybe draw some highlights from the story, it's about two brothers. One brother wants to take all his father's wealth, or his share of his father's wealth, and just go live it up. That goes horribly wrong, and he comes back, and the father runs out to greet him. And what we find in this story is an emphasis on relationship and God's view of relationship. This begins with the prodigal son goes wrong when he dishonors his sonship. And he dishonors his father even. But when he returns, the father still honors that relationship, still honors that father-son relationship, and lovingly restores the prodigal son to loving relationship. The other brother is jealous, upset about this, about what he might perceive as an injustice. He has been a good son, he has been obedient, he has been responsible, and he never got such a party. The father goes out to him. So the father pursues the younger son to bring him back into a relationship. The father pursues the older son to bring him back into relationship. And you may notice that the father is not just pursuing the older son to bring him back into relationship with him, but also wants to restore him to his brother. So it's a story that illustrates how God's loving power is faithful in relationships, even when we are not. It's a story that shows how God's power, God's loving desire to gather, seeks reconciliation between God's children. And it's a story about how this loving father seeks the healing and restoration of the prodigal son, and also the healing and the reconciliation of the older son. So this week I invite you to reflect on this story and reflect on how God even situates God's self in relationship with us, and that God's power is found in relationship. Reflect on how the character's identity is found in their relationship. And then holding that in view, holding God's loving inclusion, God's desire to to draw us into relationship. Consider how we may do the same. How might we be drawing others into loving relationship? So thank you for watching. Take courage in your fasting and in your vows and however you are choosing to observe this Lenten season. Go in peace and God bless.